2.6 charge intro. It's labeled differently on here because we used to have it labeled differently. Okay, so there's a reading that you should be familiar with here. The big takeaway from this reading is that electrons are very, very tiny and that electrons can move from one object to another. Okay, so when I was rubbing that balloon on my hair and then the balloon stuck to the wall, the reason the balloon stuck to the wall was because the act of rubbing the balloon against my head allowed the balloon to pick up electrons from my hair, therefore leaving my hair a little positive, leaving the balloon a little negative, and then the balloon stuck to the wall that was neutral. Okay, so electrons are migrants. They are constantly on the move. So electrons can scuff off onto your shoes. They can, it's very easy for them to move because, again, if we look at the structure of the atom here, electrons are on the outside, and then in the center, in the nucleus, we have protons and neutrons. This basic structure of protons and neutrons in a nucleus and electrons in the outside around the nucleus, that is something that you will be expected to know for your quiz. So if we go down, here's how we define positively, negatively, or uncharged objects. So if you are positively charged, that means that you possess more protons than neutrons. More protons than electrons. If you are negatively charged, you possess more electrons than protons. And if you are uncharged, you have an equal number of protons and electrons. So it is true that a positively charged object can contain all protons and no electrons. That is able to happen. It is also true that a negatively charged object contains excess electrons. It is not true that an object that is electrically neutral only contains neutrons. Okay, something that is electrically neutral will have an equal number of protons and electrons. Nothing can actually exist without protons. So something that has only neutrons, that just does not exist. Okay. So if we go down here, number 4 is exemplary of something that you will be asked to do on your quiz. Okay. So for charge of atom 1, we look and there are 9 protons, and then we look at the number of electrons, and 2 plus 8 equals 10. So there are 10 electrons and 9 protons. So that means we have one more electron than proton. So we have a -1 charge. For atom B, we have 11 protons, and then we have 2 plus 8 plus 1 electrons. So that is 11 electrons and 11 protons. Since the protons are equal to the electrons, we have a neutral charge. Over here for atom C, we have 20 protons, and we have 2 plus 8 plus 8 electrons. So that is 18 electrons and 20 protons, meaning that we have 2 more protons than electrons. So that's how we get the charge of +2. Okay, and then down here, so Jamal and Gina are talking. Jamal says, a positively charged object is an object that has an excess of positive electrons. Gina says, that's not true. Protons are positive, not electrons. So a positively charged object must have more protons than another atom to be positive. So with Jamal's statement, we can say that a positive object does have an excess number of positive particles, but positive particles are protons, not electrons. For Gina, we can say that yes, protons are positive, and then we can say protons do not move, only electrons move. Okay, so again, if we look at the actual structure of the atom, protons and neutrons are in the center. In the atoms we deal with in this class, protons are never going to move. Okay, for the atoms we deal with in this class, we are only going to have electrons move. Okay, so here we have two neutral objects. And again, neutral objects are just objects that have an equal number of positive and negative. And then over here, we have a square that has a -2 charge, and it gained 2 electrons. So that means that we drew 2 more minus symbols in this square compared to this circle. And then here we again start with two neutral objects, and the square becomes positively charged and now has a charge of +1. In order for that to happen, or +2. In order for that to happen, the square needs to lose two electrons. So 2 electrons moved from the square to the circle. Over here we have two negative objects, and here the circle is neutralized, so we now have a charge of 0, meaning that we had electrons leave the circle. Okay, so the square is still negative, but the circle is neutral, so it needs to have an equal number of pluses and minuses. Again, the plus number cannot change. That's why we have 4 pluses over here and over here. It's just the negative changed. Again, the only thing that can move are electrons. So if an atom gains 2 electrons, it gets a charge of -2. If an atom has a charge of +1, in order to get that charge, it had to lose 1 electron, okay? And again, the only way that anything can get a charge is by either adding electrons or losing electrons.